We have an update on federal benefits being cut, a director pushing back on recent layoffs, and now the president redirecting his attention and his threats towards the private sector. It's been a pretty wild week. How will it impact you? Let's get into it. The new National Institutes of Health, or NIH director, just gave his first address, and it was very interesting. First, when he entered the room, it was a room filled with silence. Usually people would clap, there would be some applause, but there was none of that. He appeared nervous. He also went on to say that his agency, NIH, was responsible for COVID because they funded COVID research, about $2 billion, close to $2 billion. Then he went on to mock the 5 things email. This was a requirement imposed on most federal employees to type up and send an email to OPM once a week describing 5 achievements. He says his agency doesn't have to do it. A lot of agencies, they're handling it their own way. Some of them require still to this day to send that email. But he called the whole thing silly, which to his credit, a lot of people think it was silly. Now, he also addressed the recent layoffs. Over 1,000 people were laid off, and he called a lot of it regrettable. He wished that he could have weighed in on that decision. Now, he also alluded that they're probably going to have to recall some of those employees, not just the federal workers, but also the contractors. And this is pretty much what you get when you move fast and messy. When things go fast and messy, you make mistakes, and then you try to fix them on the back end. Now, in some situations, let's say you fired a specialized researcher. Are they going to want to come back? Or are they already applying or working in a new job at this point? Next, we have a revised budget reconciliation bill. The House Rules Committee released a revised version of the GOP bill that had federal benefit cuts in it. This is coming after the Federal Budget Committee voted 17-16 on Sunday to pass it. That shows you how divisive, how tight that margin was. It shows you how people are feeling about cutting federal benefits. The good news is a proposal to increase the FERS contribution rate to 4.4% for all employees, that's off the table. Even Republicans in the House were threatening not to vote for this bill unless that language was removed. And the idea is, once you reach terms with somebody and there's an agreement on how your retirement is going to work, then you shouldn't change it. So if you came into the government before 2013, you were contributing a certain amount, and it's been that way for over a decade. And now you're trying to switch it up on them? That doesn't seem fair, not even to a lot of Republicans in Congress. That's changing the rules of the game after you have already agreed to play the game. Now, a lot of the other cuts, they're still in this bill. Like when it comes to moving high 3 to high 5, that's still in here. And also removing the supplement, which was a huge deal, that's in here as well. But they actually made it effective January 2028. So if you're retiring this year, next year, anytime in the next 2 years, it's not going to affect you. If you're retiring after 2028, then yeah, it's still a big deal. And even when the plan goes into effect, if you're currently receiving the supplement or if you're retiring in the next 2 years and you start collecting it, once this goes into effect, you're still going to receive the supplement. This only impacts people that are retiring after January 2028. The bill also expands on exemptions. So if you're a federal employee and you have a mandatory retirement date, let's say 57 years old, you're going to be exempt from the supplement cut. Now, the choice of whether you want to remain at will or do you want to keep your civil service protections, that's only for new employees. They will have to make that decision on the last day of their probation. They're going to have to elect to either pay 4.4% contribution to FERS and be at will, or pay the higher rate, which is above 9%, close to 10%, and then keep your civil service protections. If you want your civil service protections as a new employee, it's going to cost you a lot more money, meaning that new employees that are coming in, they're going to have smaller paychecks. This bill still has to go to the House floor, so we could see additional changes to the language in this bill in the coming days or weeks. Now, federal benefits have not seen this big of a change since the 1980s, when FERS was created, the Federal Employee Retirement System. Before that, it was CSRS, which is a much more generous pension system. FERS was created to give more responsibility back to the federal employee. So in FERS, you have Social Security, you have your TSP, and you have your annuity. In CSRS, it was simply the annuity. Now, right now, if you look side by side, which is bigger, a FERS retirement or a CSRS retirement? Well, in 2025, the average FERS pension is $2,100 a month, and the average CSRS pension is $5,400 a month. The CSRS offered an employee up to 80% of their high three, but it didn't include Social Security. If you take the FERS pension, even when you add Social Security, it ends up being a lot less. And that's why it's so important to continue to invest and contribute to your TSP, your thrift savings plan. And do not get scared when the market gets a little rocky and retreat into the G fund. What are you doing in the G fund? You know you should be in the S and the C fund, right? That's where the growth is happening. That's where the money is made. Too many employees decide to run to the G fund at the first sign of market instability. If this bill gets approved and signed, it will mark the first time a major change has impacted the federal retirement system in over 40 years. And it's not a change for the better. Every time these changes come, it reduces the value. Now, FERS right now, people that are collecting a FERS pension, they're complaining all the time about once you take your medical insurance out, once you take your survivor benefits, once the federal and the state taxes come out, it's not very much of anything. So once again, that's why it's important to invest in the TSP. The TSP has actually made federal employees millionaires over decades with constant contributions. And, the whole thing makes you think that in the next decade or two, if they come up with more changes, will it at some point just get eliminated? Will the pension go away? A lot of people are thinking that it's inevitable. Pensions are not sustainable. Will we see a model where the agency contributes or matches 10% in exchange for getting rid of the pension completely? It really feels like it's only a matter of time before it goes away. Okay, now let's talk tariffs, because President Trump is not only scolding the public sector, but the private sector can get it too. President Trump has decided to publicly shame companies that raise their prices due to his tariffs. The first up is the nation's largest employer, Walmart. Walmart globally employs over 2 million people. And the CEO came out and said it. We're going to have to increase some of these prices due to the global trade war, because that's what it is. I don't think this is a personal matter. This is simply about profit margins. Now, Walmart operates on a very slim profit margin, even though they make billions in revenue. How much of that is actually profit? It's something like 3%, which is still a lot of money, but they don't want to eat that cost. They don't want to eat the cost of the tariffs, because their shareholders are going to be upset. People who own the Walmart stock, not just the shareholders, but the executives on the board, everyone's going to be upset. Trump fired back on Truth Social saying Walmart should stop trying to blame tariffs. They should eat the tariffs and not charge valued customers anything. He even added, I'm watching and so are your customers. But these private companies are not going to want to eat into their profits. Walmart isn't alone. On April 29th, Amazon considered showing a tariff charge on its Haul platform. The White House press secretary held up a picture of Jeff Bezos and called it a hostile and political act. This is the same Jeff Bezos that gave $1 million to Trump after he won the election. So what ended up happening is President Trump got on the phone, got Jeff Bezos on the phone and said, hey, cut that out. And he did. Then on May 6th, Trump threatened a 100% tariff on Mattel after their CEO said tariffs would raise toy prices. He said, we'll put a 100% tariff on all their toys. They won't be able to sell one Barbie or one Hot Wheel. Once again, this is really about profits. This is not about politics. And companies, they're looking at this like, why should we reduce our profits because of your political action? At the end of the day, if it costs more for products, companies will be forced to raise the prices. No amount of bullying or scolding is going to matter. They either raise the prices or eventually they're going to go out of business. In the middle of all this, we have a worker at NASA who was publicly celebrated from going homeless, sleeping under a bridge, to finally becoming an analyst in NASA, where a lot of people want to work. And then, in a blink of an eye, in a snap of a finger, she's fired. She's shown the door. If you want to know more about that, check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.